Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Great to be with you again today. Well, it is Friday, and I've got a couple things I want to talk to you about before we get into some of these very, very important issues, as we are now, I think we are now 19 days from the election. Yeah, I think it's 19. We are counting down, folks. We are counting down. But before I get to all of that, first of all, let me just say that this is Friday. If you are in the area and you're looking for a church to visit or you're looking for a church home, come visit us at 943 Canal Drive in Chesapeake, Virginia. That's the Deep Creek section of Chesapeake. I will be there preaching. I am preaching a brief two-part series. The first sermon was, if the devil can't shake you, he can't break you, out of Psalm 112, that the one who delights himself, fears the Lord and delights himself in God's commandments is never shaken. And then the second part of that message is going to be, if he didn't make you and he can't break you. And folks, I believe that with every fiber of my being. The devil can't shake you. Now, look, you got to believe that now. You can't just read that and say, well, but then start trying to figure out all the exceptions. It says, if you fear the Lord and delight greatly in his commandments, it goes on to say, I think it's down around the 6th verse, he is never shaken because his heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. Now, you got to believe that. And you got to practice that and say, Lord, my heart is steadfast, trusting in you. I am not shaken. Now, you can test yourself with all kinds of scenarios and ask the question, well, how could that be? Look, it doesn't mean your emotions are never affected. It doesn't mean you're an ice block. It means that the central core of your being is steadfast and sober and anchors you. You know, the Bible says, I think it's Hebrews chapter 6, that we have, this hope we have is an anchor for the soul, sure and steadfast, which enters the presence behind the veil. So we have the hope in God is an anchor for the soul. It roots you. It grounds you. It inoculates you against depression and despair and discouragement that threatens to debilitate you. In fact, I said in that message, Satan is not after your money. He's not after your health. He's not after your relationships. He's not after your job. He's after you. And all of those accoutrements that he tries to affect, that he tries to destroy, are with a view to destroying you. That's the goal. He doesn't care about your stuff. He wants you. He wants to discourage you. Ultimately, what he wants to do is separate you from God and get you in, basically destroy your life and send you to hell. I mean, that's the ultimate game plan. But he can't do that when you are sober and steadfast. And as the Psalm 112 man says, his heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. He can't do it because you keep. In fact, you know what? I ended up teaching the whole message, and I don't want to do that. By the way, I aired that message on Monday, so you can find it on our Facebook page. I'm pretty sure you can find it on bishopewjackson.tv as well. I got to get all that together so I can make that easier for those of you who want to follow that and can't watch it maybe on a Sunday or a Monday, but you still want to see these messages. So I wanted to get that out of the way. Our services started at 11 a.m., 943 Canal Drive in Chesapeake, Virginia. And if you can't join us, you can watch us. We'll be live streaming at about 11:10 a.m., live streaming the message. So you can join us that way. And, of course, it's on Facebook. And it's on, in fact, we aired on standamerica.us. We aired on thecall.org. We aired on bishopewjackson.tv. And we aired on E.W. Jackson for America. So it's on a number of different. Oh, and on our YouTube channel. How can I forget that? The YouTube channel, the channel that tells me they won't monetize my account because my content is harmful. But nevertheless, we're on there. And you know what? Actually, let me find out. I think it's on Rumble too, but I've got to check into that. I got to check into that. So there's all kinds of ways for you to watch it. Again, Sunday, 11 a.m. at 943 Canal Drive, the Call Church. I'll be there preaching the Word of God. All right, that's the first thing I wanted to get out of the way. Second thing, of course, this is Friday. I want to talk to you today about STAND and about where we are and what we're doing. You all know the STAND really is a three-pronged organization. We've got STAND Foundation, Inc., which is the nonprofit 501c3. Your contributions to STAND are completely tax deductible up to the amount allowable by law, depending on how much you give in donations to various organizations. But generally speaking, your entire donation is tax deductible. If it's a donation and it's not given in return for any product or service, it's a tax deductible donation. Then we also have Stand America PAC, which is a federal political super PAC. That's redundant. A federal super PAC. And of course, your contributions to that, just like to 501c3, are unlimited, but they're not tax deductible. Your contributions to a PAC are not tax deductible. But they're unlimited. So you can give as much as you want. You can give 50, you can give 5,000, you can give 50,000, you can give 100,000, you can give $1 million. I hope someone will one day give $1 million to our PAC so that we can do more than we're doing now. We've never done any TV ads. We haven't been able to afford those. We've only done radio ads. But generally speaking, we've been focused on, particularly when it gets down to the wire, focused on trying to move black voters. And so the venues for reaching them are less expensive than the venue for reaching the entire population, or say Christian voters across the board, which I'd love to be able to do one day, and trust that I will. And then we've got a 501c4. Now the 501c4 exists, but it is not active because there's really no funding for it. Now the 501c4, as you all know, is a sort of a political nonprofit organization. Contributions to a 501c4 are also not tax deductible, but a 501c4 can endorse candidates, it can support candidates, it can get involved in legislative matters and lobbying, and it can do a 501c4 can do a bunch of political stuff that a 501c3 cannot do. So Stand Foundation Inc. doesn't endorse candidates. We don't contribute to candidates. We don't expend any of those resources helping candidates at all. I have a firewall between that. So we primarily use the PAC for that. And one day we'll be able to activate the 501c4 to get more involved in, probably more in legislative and policy matters than we are right now. So for example, if we're dealing with something either on a local or a state or federal level, some legislation or some policy issue that we want to impact, that would be the entity through which we would, generally speaking, would do that. Of course, the PAC can also do that, but a PAC is primarily for campaigns and for elections, and so that's why the PAC is very active right now. Our PAC is probably, when all is said and done, probably going to spend close to $100,000 by the time this campaign is over, reaching black voters in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Now, that's not a lot of money compared to the dollars spent, but it is a lot of money compared to the dollars that are being spent on reaching the black community because, frankly, there's very little being spent. And when we go to these venues, by the way, I might even be spending Election Day in Georgia. I'm contemplating that right now. I got to come through Georgia on my way back from Tampa, and I may well stay in Georgia. Got to have a chance to visit my granddaughter and do a little campaign work while I'm there, since we're spending a lot of money. A lot of that $100,000, a lot of that is being expended in Georgia because there's so many venues and opportunities in Georgia and pockets of populations in Georgia that we can reach, trying to impact that vote. And frankly, folks, the work we've been doing is working because, as you can see, Kamala Harris is panicking right now that she's not getting a sufficient number of black voters. And I'm going to say we can take some credit for that because we're the only ones out there pitching a conservative message and encouraging black voters, particularly Christian voters, to vote for Donald Trump and not for Kamala Harris. So And we're going to be doing that right up to Election Day. So, again, the website there is standamericapac.us. That's standamericapac.us. If you want to give to that effort, go ahead and do it. We'd appreciate that. But let me back up then and talk a little bit about Stand before I get into these issues, because that's what I intend to do on Fridays. And I pray for your finances too on Fridays, because I realize between inflation and a lot of economic uncertainty, a lot of people have kind of pulled in because they felt like, wow, I've got credit card debt that, suddenly the interest rates have risen and I'm paying a lot more to pay off my credit card debt. And people have been hard pressed. My food bills are costing. I went to the supermarket the other day. Yeah, I do go to the supermarket, folks. And I bought something I've been buying for years. And when I, because I tend to ring through, I don't go do big shopping. I'll stop by the supermarket on the way home. My wife said, "Can you pick up this or pick up that?" And yeah, and I'll go through the self-checkout. And I'm putting this thing through the self-checkout, and it's giving me the price. I said, "What? Whoa!" I'm saying I was shocked at the price it was giving me, and I thought, "Wow, man." So, thank God I didn't have to put anything back. I'm my wife and I are blessed to the point where we can buy whatever food we want to buy, but we'd rather pay less for it than pay more for it, particularly when we're paying more for it because of Biden's stupid policies, not because that's the normal market cost of a product, but because they have flooded the economy with all of this free money, and they've created inflation everywhere. They've raised the price of energy for us, so that raises the cost of everything, because everything requires energy in order to transport it, in order to get it to the marketplace where people can buy it. We have really suffered a mess under this administration. So I want to pray for your finances as well as we pray for the country's financial situation as well. We are, what is it now? I forget the exact number now, but I know it's over $35 trillion in debt. This is unconscionable, and it's unsustainable. And really, we haven't spent much time talking about that because so many other issues have come to the fore. The economy is one of them. That the economy is number one. But long term, we've got to deal with this debt. We've got to. You do, I do, right? You get into a debt situation. What do? I know what I do. I see credit card debt rising. I say, okay, I got to cut that. I stop spending, start cutting, and start paying off. I want to get that debt down. I want to get it eliminated. Our country is no different. But instead, the politicians just keep spending more and more and more and borrowing more and more and more. And it's unrealistic. You and I can't do that. Can you imagine having a credit card that has no limits on it? And you get it to 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, and you just say, "Oh, I'll just roll. I'll just pay a little bit of interest and roll it." Then it's $1 million, then it's $5 million, and you just, no big deal. No, it'll bankrupt you. It'll destroy you. Eventually, it'll gobble up all your income if you could be. No credit company would allow you to do that. No credit card company would allow you to do that. But I'm saying, if theoretically, if you could do that, and you just kept spending, eventually it would absolutely financially destroy you. Our country is no different. What are we going to go? Are we going to get to $100 trillion in debt eventually? Because based on this present trajectory, the answer is yes. What happens then? What happens when all the tax revenue that we're raising is needed in order to pay the interest on the debt service? Now, and folks, that is not a far-fetched scenario based upon what's happening right now. And I don't know what we're paying now, but with increased interest rates, I think the last number I heard, don't hold me to this because I didn't study this in preparation for the program, but I think the last number I heard was we were paying close to $1 trillion in interest a year. I remember when it was like 200 billion. And that was a lot. When the interest rates increase, just like an individual, just like a business, the cost of our debt increases as a nation, which is something we used to talk about when they're busy spending all this money at low interest rates. And people like me and others would say, and what happens when the interest rates rise? Well, we saw what happens. We see what happens. It creates that much more financial pressure on the nation. So that's something we've got to deal with. Okay. Let me get that. That's an issue I didn't really plan to talk about, but it's worth bringing up because it is an important issue that we should never, ever lose sight of. But here's what I want to get to. Okay. I'm going to give you all a little inside baseball. Okay. A little inside baseball. Stan has existed for 15 years. Next year, we will celebrate our 16th anniversary of existence. We began in July of 2009. I'm just going to give you a ballpark figure. I would say in that period of time, we have probably raised about $5 million. That would be my guess. We probably raised about $5 million. Certainly in that ballpark. Okay, in that ballpark. I really want us to get to a point where our budget is $5 million a year. That's where I want to go and beyond. I want STAND to be a premier Christian conservative organization in America. Because we are the only organization in America with the mission of bringing Americans together across racial and cultural lines to uphold our Judeo-Christian values and principles. We're the only we're the only organization in America with that mission. Now, we have organizations that are dedicated to upholding Judeo-Christian values and life and family. And we have organizations that are dedicated to uplifting the black community and that. But there's no organization other than STAND that is committed to bringing Americans together across racial and cultural lines, united, one nation under God, to uphold our Judeo-Christian values and principles, the principles that made America the greatest nation on earth. There's no other organization like it. But we've got to have a financial breakthrough. Now, don't get me wrong. We're not about to close our doors or anything like that. But in order for this organization to really have a viable future, there's several things that I need. And I'm saying this because I want you all to be praying for me. And I'm saying this because maybe somebody will be listening who can write the check that really gets this process started. I've got to have an executive director because right now I'm president, founder, and executive director. So I run the day-to-day operation. And I can't really do that as effectively as I could and speak and write. And I'd really want to do more speaking and writing and casting vision for the organization and have someone else who handles the day-to-day activities that are necessary in order to implement the vision. Okay, right now I'm casting the vision and implementing the vision and so forth. So I need an executive director. I need a development director because right now I'm the executive director and the development director. The development director, as you all know, is the person who raises the money. Well, I'm the person who raises the money for the organization. Now, of course, the development director would not absolve me of responsibility for being the chief fundraiser in a sense, but they would take off of my hands the responsibility for organizing that process and would basically be finding and pointing me in the right direction and sort of helping pave the way for me to see and meet and get to know the right people. And eventually, as we grow, the development director would be going out and meeting people and just setting up meetings with me when necessary. Okay, when people say, well, look, I want to meet Bishop E.W. Jackson. I want to talk to him. Fine, I fly out to see them or go wherever we need to go in order for them to meet me. So we need a development director. And then we need a communications director because we're doing a lot of different things, but we're really not getting the kind of media recognition that we need. Not that the mainstream media wants to recognize us or would recognize us, but we got to keep pressing it out there. So really, I end up being the communications director. So I write the press releases and get the press releases out. It's too much to do it all as effectively as it needs to be done. So there's 3 positions right there that I need to have filled. I can't fill those positions without a much bigger budget than the one I'm operating on now. The other thing is I need a direct mail campaign. I've got to have a direct mail campaign because we need a minimum of 5, 10, but I would like to get up to 10, 15, 20, 25,000 donors who give regularly to the work of Stand and who get our mailings on a regular or monthly basis. That creates a much more stable source of income, a reliable source of income, but it takes a big investment to get that started. And most of the people I talk to say it's going to take about $50,000 to start that process, and probably at least 1, maybe 2 years before you even see a return from it. I don't have an extra $50,000 to expend and wait for a year or 2 before it starts bringing in the revenues. Now, over time, it's more than worth it. I mean, it's not even a question. But you've got to have the extra resources in order to be able to do that. So I've got to have that, Phil. So an executive director, development director, communications director, and a direct mail campaign are 4 things that I really need. But in order to meet the budget to do that, in order to be able to do that, we've got to pretty much double our present budget. We've got to pretty much double it. And our present budget runs $400,000 to $500,000, depending on the year. So call it $800,000 to $1 million a year in order to fill those positions, in order to get direct mail going and this kind of thing. Remember, we're a very efficient organization. We don't have any bricks and mortar. Maybe the day will come, but that's not a big priority for me right now, because with the technology we've got, our staff is virtual. Everybody can work from their home and get the work done, and it's working for us very well. I don't see any need to try to buy a $1 million building in order to house Stan, at least not at this stage. Maybe that time will come. But I don't see that coming in the next 5 years or so, at the very least. I like being lean and mean because then the funds get to be expended to do the work. And by the way, people don't know this. Look, salary, travel, airplanes, hotels. I mean, those are the 3 biggest expenses we face. And you have a lot of large donors who want to give to program. They don't want to give to the infrastructure of the organization, but I try to tell large donors, but look, if you don't help with the infrastructure, you're not setting it up so that your investment is going to be sustainable, is going to produce fruit long term. Because if all you give me is programmatic dollars, well, when those dollars run out for the program, but I don't have anything in place to keep replenishing and replacing those dollars, and I've got to go out and try to chase another big donor who maybe will give that amount again, or maybe that donor will give it, but eventually donors say, well, I've given you this over the last 2 or 3 years. We've got to have some angel investors who are going to give $250,000, $500,000, $1 million or more. Would you all pray for that with me? Because we've got to have that. After 15 years, I realized we've got to have that in order for this organization to really move forward and really be effective. I mean, you think about what we accomplish with $500,000 or less a year, and you compare that to some of these organizations with literally some of them seemingly unlimited budgets, but $15, $20, $25 million a year. And I'm not criticizing, just pointing out the facts. They haven't changed the country, have they? They haven't changed the country. And God bless them for the work that they do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not denigrating it. But with all that money, it hasn't happened. And we really believe that what we are doing is a critical part of the equation. Because we're covering both the spiritual and the political, if you will, or the prophetic side. I mean, Stan has a weekly prayer meeting for our nation. Stand in Prayer for America. Go to our website, standamerica.us, and you can learn more about it. Every Friday. In fact, it's happening today, 12 noon Eastern Time. You can join in Prayer for America every single Friday without fail. I am a preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I just invited you to my church. I'm preaching every Sunday. Jesus Christ and the Word of God are first and foremost in my life. And here again, I'm not knocking anybody else. I'm just saying, how many organizations do you know, like mine, political organizations that are being run by preachers of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Run. I don't mean people on staff, but who founded, cast the vision, and are running it. Very few. Very few. And again, there's no organization like ours. None that has the same mission we have. We are not replicating anybody's work. We may overlap here and there with organizations, but we're not replicating anybody's work because we are doing something that everybody knows needs to be done, but that nobody else is really doing. And I think it's in part because they just don't feel equipped. They don't feel called to do it. I do. So maybe you are that donor who can write me a check for $250,000, or write me a check for $500,000, or write me a check for $1 million to support the work that we are doing and to allow me to put in place these things I've talked about. But whether you are or not, you are certainly a person of prayer. If you're watching me right now, you're a person of prayer who can certainly pray that the Lord will open those doors for me and send people who will help us. I talked to a friend of mine, and in fact, I've talked to more than one friend, but I won't give their names because it probably would be revealing information that they don't want said publicly, who have kind of went through exactly what we go through, which is, hustling to meet the budget, and suddenly there's a breakthrough. Suddenly there's a breakthrough. And one friend said a donor passed away and left his organization multi-millions of dollars. We want our supporters to include us in their estate plans. But again, a development director is somebody who could help flesh out that project, flesh out that program, and get more people involved in it. And I had another friend of mine who's got a tremendous organization say they were just sort of struggling until a particular donor gave them $1 million, and boom, that was it. Never looked back. That put them on the map. That allowed them to do the things I'm telling you, to put themselves in a position where they became self-sustaining, in the sense that at least they had the infrastructure in place, they had the direct mail in place, that they could sustain the work that they were doing. They got that, but they needed that initial major boost. So that's what we need. So will you all join with me in praying for that? I want to pray for you before I close out. So I've taken up a lot of time with that. I don't normally take up that much time with it, but I felt it necessary to share that with you today. I've just felt led to do that. Let's talk a little bit about these issues. Then I want to pray for the country and pray for you and pray for financial needs, since today is the day for financial needs. And by the way, who has despised the day of small things, says the Lord? If you can only give $5 a month or $10 a month. COVID really hurt us with our Patriot Partners program. At one point, I don't even want to start going into it, but let's put it this way. We had a lot of attrition that we didn't even know about, credit cards expiring and failure to have the bandwidth to follow up with the credit card expirations and so on and so forth. I think we're going to have a Patriot Partners revival program. I'm not sure when we're going to do it, but my goal has been to get to 500 Patriot Partners, and COVID caused me to lose ground rather than gain ground. So, but we're hoping to get to 500 Patriot Partners, people who give on a monthly basis. That's not through direct mail. That can be through checks or through giving online, but 500 of them. And right now, I think we've got somewhere in the vicinity of about 225 of them. I think that's the number now, although believe me, it's been a little bit of a struggle getting to an accurate number. Grateful for the ones I've got. For you Patriot Partners, you know, I'm going to be doing, I think, a quarterly meeting with our Patriot Partners, our regular givers, and be praying for you. But we need a lot more of you. Okay, we need a lot more of you, so be praying for that as well. Okay, all right. Let me get to some of these issues. You know, Kamala, I guess is the Kamala. I mean, please. You know, these people are so full of themselves. Didn't show up at the Al Smith dinner last night, and my guess is what she's really basically saying is that that's not her crowd. That's just not her crowd. What is her crowd? Radical leftists. That's her crowd. Remember, she didn't listen to she didn't show up at Congress to hear Benjamin Netanyahu speak. She went to her sorority party because that's her crowd. Radical, leftist, feminist, whatever crowd. So her missed opportunity, and then she sent in something, but it wasn't even funny. And Donald Trump, I heard some of the excerpts. Donald Trump was funny. Of course, he's funny anyway. He's funny without even trying. Donald Trump is just entertaining. He really is. In addition to being a strong and forceful and forthright in his policies, he really is entertaining to listen to. But at any rate, her loss. I mentioned the other day that Planned Parenthood's corrupt, disgusting policies toward women were exposed. And I mentioned, I wasn't sure, in fact, I couldn't think of the name, but the guy's name is James O'Keefe. You all know who I'm talking about. He's been sued. They've tried to put him in jail, but he's still at it. And most recently, he has revealed once again through an inside Facebook engineer that Facebook is in fact shadow banning people. And I know they're shadow banning me. I know it because I used to get thousands of people watching my Facebook posts, and now it's hundreds. And my Facebook page at one point was just growing exponentially, and then it just came to a stop. I mean, just an absolute stop. I was watching it. I wasn't adding any new followers. And I know that was not because of the content. The content hadn't changed. It was because they decided they didn't like my content, just like YouTube told me, your content is harmful. Well, this meta engineer admitted that they intentionally limit the reach of people with whom they disagree. But they don't advise the Facebook user. They don't tell them that it's shadow banning, they call it, because it's in the shadows. They don't say anything to you. They just do it. They're censoring without you having an opportunity to appeal or to find out what's going on, because they're doing it very quietly and very stealthily so that you can't prove anything. You don't know anything. This engineer said the person would not be notified. So they just basically target your account and say, limit that one. He says there's an integrity team, and that's a pretty significant team, and they build all these classifiers. Said the basic level of defense system that Facebook has built now is they built things they call civic classifiers, a large model that has been trained on civic content or anything that it detects to have civic content to demote. In other words, they identify the content and they demote its ability to reach their audience. It said that means if anything is related to political content, it's automatically not shown. Then he says there's a SWAT team that's been set up since April just to think about all the scenarios of how the platform can be used. And he's saying they believe Meta has the ability to influence the 2024 election, and that Mark Zuckerberg, who I said I hope is going through some changes, stands behind the initiative. I mean, they say we show less political content. They say of all kinds. I think they're lying, and viewpoints, because users have told us they want less of it. They're lying. They're lying, because I guarantee they're not showing less of liberal content. So, again, you need resources to bust through all this nonsense. But this is what we're up against, folks, which is why, I used to have stuff go viral all the time. I mean, fairly regularly, things would go viral. I don't think I've had anything go viral on Facebook in years. What's different? I'm not different. My content is not different. They figured out a way to stop people they don't like or don't agree with. Here's the next issue. I just wanted to get that out there and not spend a lot of time on that, because we know what that is, and we know we've got to figure out ways to overcome it. I said that's why I've got my own platform, and this is not just airing on Facebook, obviously, because I can't. I'd be a fool to rely on them. And I'm hoping that with more resources, I will be able to enhance this platform and get it out to a variety of venues so that it goes far and wide. Because I have to tell you, I am so disgusted that they treat this guy, Leonard Larry McKelvey, a.k.a. Charlemagne whatever, like he's like he's dispensing wisdom from on high, and the guy is a complete idiot. I mean, he needs to be saved, but he's a complete idiot. And Donald Trump is we know what Donald Trump is proposing is fascism. Why can't we say that? I mean, what a dunce. I'd love to ask him, well, to define fascism for me. And I guarantee he'd look at you with a blank stare, because he doesn't have a clue what fascism is. Well, where did fascism come from? Where did it get started? He probably doesn't have a clue. But the media, oh, Lord have mercy. Jesus help us. Barack Obama, as you all know, has been trotted out, along with some others, to scold the black community, particularly black men, about not supporting Kamala Harris. And black men are responding. One of them said, "Where you been, homie?" I mean, again, as I said yesterday, I think, Barack Obama to correct black men? Is he a man? I think that's questionable. Number one. Number two, what did Barack Obama ever do to help the black community? Well, I won't bother to reiterate. I mean, we can tick off what he did to help homosexuality and gender degeneracy and sexual deviancy. He's big on that. We can tick off what he did to help save the planet from climate change. We can certainly tick off all that he did and said to support Islam. Black men, the black community, the black family. America, for that matter. I tell you what, if he did anything, he kept it a very close secret. I remember him lighting up the White House in rainbow colors to celebrate this abomination that they call same-sex marriage, which there's no such thing. It does not exist, except in the wicked, twisted minds of some Supreme Court justices and a few misguided legislators and a bunch of godless, demonically possessed people. It's nonsense. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's made up. Same-sex marriage. I mean, same-sex marriage is like, well, you know what? Never mind. I won't bother. But let's put it this way: it's an oxymoron. Okay, it is an unresolvable incongruity. Same-sex marriage. And then lastly, before I pray, and by the way, you know, we're about to start running ads in behalf to black men on these radio stations in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Want to help us with that? Go to StandAmericaPac.us. We are about to start. The spot has been written. It's got to be recorded. But it should start posting no later than Monday, start airing no later than Monday or Tuesday of next week on a variety of radio stations in these areas. So we are continuing to chip away at Kamala Harris's level of black support. Forgive me for correcting myself. I just don't want people thinking that I'm trying to be insulting, because I really thought it was Kamala. I mean, I got plenty to insult her about. I don't need to insult her about her name. Because to me, I thought it was Kamala. But apparently, because didn't one of these reporters correct, I think, Donald Trump? It's Kamala. And please, what's the difference? Israel, as you all know, has taken action, as well they should, to kill, really, I guess, the final Hamas leader, Yahya Sinwar. Well, now Biden and Harris are trying to take credit for it. But they killed him by doing exactly what the Biden administration told them they should not do. They did not want them invading Rafah in southern Gaza. They didn't want them going into Rafah. But Rafah is where they killed Sinwar. And now they're acting like, oh, this is great. We're so... If Netanyahu had been a wet noodle and listened to those idiots, Sinwar would still be alive. Because they were threatening. In fact, Kamala Harris specifically said that if they go into Rafah, if Israel goes into Rafah, there will be consequences. Well, you know, their hypocrisy knows no bounds. Israel did exactly what they wanted them to not do, and now they're acting like we were there, we were supportive all along. Of course, that's typical for dishonest people. I've said all along, Israel needs to do what Israel must do for Israel's survival, and not listen to these leftist half-baked politicians that really, they've got a very perverse view of Israel. They really believe that Israel is an apartheid state and all this stupid nonsense that the left comes up with. And they should just ignore them and do what you need to do. When Donald Trump becomes president of the United States again, Israel will have a reliable ally in the White House. And what we've got to do, folks, and I'm hoping that this election will help do it. See, the Democrats have a strategy for destroying the two-party system and turning America into a one-party state. That's what this illegal alien invasion is all about. That's what it's all about, folks. That is their strategy for destroying the two-party system and creating a one-party state over which they have control. Republicans really do need to have a strategy. I'm not for a one-party state, but for destroying this abomination of the Democrat Party. Maybe something else will arise that is more pro-American. Maybe that leans left, but is more pro-American rather than Marxist. But as far as I'm concerned, the Democrat Party they're no longer a valid representation of the values of the United States of America. You know, here we talk about this concept of being an American technically, but really not in heart. Because I really believe that being an American is more than having official citizenship. Being an American is a matter of the heart. And the Democrat Party has completely lost that. They are not Americans at heart. They are globalists at heart. And they see our country as simply fitting into this globalist idea that they have of how they're going to ultimately rule the world and have us all eating bugs and relying on the sun for all of our energy, even when it's not shining, and relying on wind, even when it's not blowing. And somebody said, we tried that 200 years ago. How'd that work out for them? So, one more thing on immigration. By the way, let me take one at a time. Oh, I'm over my time already. Make no mistake about this, folks. If Harris becomes president and she has control of the House and the Senate, they're to really unconstitutionally, in my view, legalize all these people, use their votes even before they're legal citizens, and they're already doing that in some cities across the country, and basically violate the privacy of parents by taking their children away from them if they won't go along with all this sexual deviancy nonsense that the Democrat Party is so infected with. You're looking at a country that is unrecognizable if these people get power. So we just got to make sure. Donald Trump's ahead. I think the momentum is moving in his direction, but we cannot take anything for granted. It's got to be boots on the ground, all hands on deck, and whatever metaphor you want. Nothing left in the ring. We've got to go for this thing. We've got to act as if we are losing. We're down in terms of our activity. As my pastor used to say, we got to work like everything depends upon us and pray like everything depends upon God. If we do what we need to do, we're going to have, I thought I had this thing on Do Not Disturb. We're going to have a great victory. So listen, God bless each and every one of you. I love you. I'm praying for you. Come visit us if you're in the area, or at 943 Canal Drive at 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. In the meantime, you know what to do. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.